Now, lifeadministration.com presents the Life Administration Podcast. Here are your hosts, Leslie Loftus and Ryan Taylor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Life Administration Podcast. My name is Ryan Taylor, and with me, as always, is
Leslie Loftus. Good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're listening.
Yeah.
We're recording in the morning.
It's morning time.
It's morning time
because
for
we got a new schedule.
We've got a new schedule.
We got a new schedule.
Okay, pretty much. So when Lauren found out what was going on around here, we're changing. Ryan's kind of a jack of all trades sort of person, and so stuff comes up, and my kids want to learn things, and Ryan's like, "Oh, I can do that." And so he tells Lauren that he's got to bring his golf clubs now because he's going to teach one of my kids the basics of golf.
Right.
And she's like, "What goes on?
What goes on over there?" She's like, "You go over, record podcasts, you teach music. We got golf lessons now. I'm hearing rumblings of this like couch to 5K thing that's going on. Like, what happened?" Like, all I know is that like I'm gonna need more time there. So,
yeah, exactly. So it was
to.
a long time ago. We just set Thursdays is the day that Ryan comes and does whatever it is that needs to be done.
Whatever it is that Ryan does.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so when we were first moving to this house, there was a lot of tech set up, and so Ryan did all that. It's a fluid situation.
It's a fluid situation.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Right, and then I'm also laughing
status.
because you had when he does the little break at the beginning, he has a little clap to mark like what's the snap board that they have on Hollywood movies
for takes.
For takes,
yeah.
Yes. He did it very quietly this morning. That's because the wolfhound has already moved to the couch down.
And I didn't
we're
want
up
her
in
coming
a
up.
loft basically, and sometimes she gets startled and she thinks that we're calling her when we do the clap.
And she get the clap was like.
Yeah, it was very soft.
It was very soft, very soft.
So I was laughing at it.
So today we are talking about the sandwich generation.
Yes.
And if for the uninformed, what does that mean? Can you give us a definition?
Sandwich generation is the term for people that are sandwiched between caring for children, increasingly young children. So they've still got children at home, and their parents have started to move into the stage where they need care, so that they're sandwiched between caring for the littles and caring for the olders.
Right.
And it gets it's always been difficult, but these days the timing is a little, because 20, 30 years ago, or I guess even longer than that, let's call it 50 years ago, the sandwich generation used to hit when you had high schoolers at home. Or sometimes it would even hit as they go off to college. So you'd get the, now I'm an empty nester. I can kind of relax and I'm going to have more time to myself. And then all of a sudden your parents move into the stage where they need more care. It's like, oh, that's not exactly what I planned. But now it increasingly happens when you've got toddlers and elementary school kids.
Right.
Both because elders tend to be healthier longer because of various advances in medical care. And we tend to have children later. So between those two things, now it is not uncommon to have people sandwiched between older toddlers and elementary school students and parents in need of care. That's why we're talking about this today, because this is hard.
And also
hard
too,
stuff.
as a quick side note, there are some times that you find yourself in you may not be in the actual sandwich generation currently, but then all of a sudden these life events can happen very quickly.
Right.
Where all of a sudden you find yourself in, I have to take care, right? These are the kind of things that nobody can plan for,
right. One of your parents has a car accident.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Somebody
has a stroke or whatever. There's a bunch of reasons why all of a sudden you can find yourself in this situation. Right. And so you might hear the title of the episode, you might hear what we're talking about, and you go, I probably don't need this one. But the reality is you could need this one tomorrow.
You might need it tomorrow.
And I don't
there's
wish
a lot
that.
of pre-prep work.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into some of this, but there's a lot of talks and discussions and planning that if you did that 5 years before, it can really help.
Yeah.
It can really help.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Even if you think, oh, no, that's not me. And that's not me for another 10 years. It might be go ahead and listen.
Yeah, I would say this is kind of like a stuffing the parachute kind of moment, right? You're stuffing the parachute, you're
That's
preparing
excellent.
all
I
the
like
stuff, and then like at some point you're gonna have to pull this ripcord, and when
Right.
you pull it, it needs to come out fast and furious, and everything.
And
needs
goodness
to-
gracious, it needs to.
It's gotta
Right,
flow
it's gotta
because
go.
you have what's gonna happen is you like we said, the sandwich, you have these two probably kids on one side, parents on the other side that are demanding two totally separate things, and if you're not prepared, it's
Right.
going to be a mess, right?
Mhm.
So, okay, I think that's
stressful
good.
mess.
A stressful mess, yeah, absolutely.
Because you care about all of these things. You don't want to drop the ball on your parents or your kids, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
And at some point, you might want to actually, I don't know, sleep.
Right? Yeah, that'd be a good thing.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's good. I'm gonna have some questions here, I think.
Well, because one of the little bit of background on this. So, my husband and I, we have already been through most of the sandwich stuff. We have, my mother is still alive, and she's still mostly able to care for herself and stuff like that. But we did it with the other three parents, and Ryan, for various reasons, is kind of going through it right now. So he's
Yep.
got a 5-year-old and elders in
5-year-old, one on the way.
one on the way, and elders in need of care. So he's kind of the classic case right now.
Yep.
So actually, this episode, I was like, we need to do a sandwich generation episode. He came in about 2 weeks ago and was just,
I was stressed out.
he was trying because he'd been going back and forth
Yep.
to help some, grandparents, and
Yep.
it's hard.
Yep.
It's hard. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do an episode on that.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, let's kick it off. Let's
All
go.
So I already covered that it's always already been difficult. It used to be teens, and now it's toddlers. This also means that the entire cost of education and the cost of care collide. So one of the original worries was parents would save for college. They'd be sending their child off to college, and now all of a sudden, their parents require extra health care, moving around, such like that. And suddenly it's and parents hadn't necessarily always saved for that. A little bit of history in this. So 60s, maybe, lots of advances in healthcare had started, but they hadn't really been felt yet. Anyway, it was pretty cheap. Insurance companies were selling long-term care out the wazoo, pretty cheap. They were just kind of flying off the shelf. So here, after your retirement, these are benefits that you can get. So when you need to have extra care or in-home nursing care, or you need to go into a special home or something like that, that you have, it's the classic time that the actuaries missed, because healthcare had advanced so much and people had gotten healthier, that suddenly the life expectancy expanded so much their math was wrong. And now getting long-term care insurance, first of all, insurance companies went under left and right, due to the cost of long-term care. The companies that managed to stay afloat limited their type of long-term care programs, and they're very expensive now. I highly recommend that sometime under 35, you look into buying a long-term care, because they're much cheaper to buy them when you're in your, say, 30s and you're not thinking about it at all,
Right.
than they are when, oh, goodness gracious, mom and dad are 65 now and mom's hip is giving her, now let's look into a long-term care plan. It's going to be a lot more expensive.
You're gonna send your fact sheet in, your
Yes.
assessment sheet, and you're gonna be getting dinged left and right,
Right.
where much earlier there's not gonna be any dings, or maybe
Right.
just a few. And yes, it will be significantly cheaper. That's
Right.
a
And
great
it is-
great point.
When the sandwich actually hit, when it comes time to pull the ripcord on this and have the parachute go out, you need the extra funds.
Yeah.
Because most likely you are going to be trying to fund various, you're funding childcare and education and all this kind of stuff for your children. And oh, by the way, there's extra expenses now that come. I mean, even if your parents have good health insurance, well, you're still looking at it's still more than you think.
Yeah.
It is still more than you think. So having that extra cushion of some sort, either that or aggressively plan for when you're doing financial plans, when you're in, hopefully we've got some people in their 20s and stuff listening to this. We've talked about budgeting in various episodes. Go back to the Money 101 stuff and the finance stuff. we talk about savings. As you start to get a better job and you have more options for saving, aggressively save not only for your own retirement, but also for that cushion time to be able to help your elder generation through theirs. Because guess what? As a general rule, they didn't.
Yeah.
Or how about this? It's better to assume that they didn't
Yeah.
than it is to, oh, well, they've got that. And then only to find when you get to the end of the stage, they're like, oh, goodness gracious. No, they have nothing in the bank. You're faced with having to sell their house. Anyhow.
Right. The worst thing that happens is that you have a bunch of money.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. The worst thing has happened. You've got options.
Yeah, right. It's the worst thing that can happen. So even if, again, I can understand and empathize with people that are going through and like, oh, I got to save for this. I got to save for this. I can barely buy groceries. But hey, right. Just a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be this remember what you're planning for hopefully is years down the line, right?
Decades.
So we've talked about getting compound interest and getting that to work for you. So just like a little bit at a time, even like $50 a month, you know, is
exactly.
like,
if you can stick that into something interest bearing.
Yeah. 50 bucks a month.
If you can do that when you're 25, then by the time you're 45, 55, and this becomes an issue.
Yep.
If that's all you did, you're still in a better position. And it probably wasn't that painful to put away the $50.
No, not at all. And so I'm really starting to see it with this aside, but the math still works is like with Hallie's college fund. Like the only thing that Lauren and I rigorously save for, honestly, is like Hallie has more money than we do. Like that's the truth, right? Because when she was born, I said, okay, what we're going to do is every time that I get paid, I'm just going to take $10 and I'm going to put it in this account every time. Doesn't matter how much I get paid. Like if it's a $200 bill or $500, just boom, right? Every time. And so that statement actually came to us, and all of a sudden I looked at it and there was $7,000 in there that's, and she just turned 5. Right. This is good. This is a good thing that we have going on here. So then you multiply that out over 10 years or something, it's going to be a lot nicer when her time comes for college or whatever, but she's going to get scholarships. Like, let's be real. Yeah. Right. So again, the worst thing that happens is I get some extra money at the end. Right.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. Very, very, very important to be planning for that in the future. So let's talk about this first principle, right? Because like we're going to have to spend some time.
Remember when we were talking about the kid stuff and Ryan was saying, if there's one thing you listen to, it's try to find a bedtime and hit it.
Yeah.
This is that for the sandwich generation.
No question.
Okay. To really make it work, everybody needs to be within a 3-mile, 15-minute bubble.
This will be harder than saving for anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, okay, you're looking at, parents who say lived in the same house for 40 years and you don't work in the same city and you're trying to convince them to come move to you. Or maybe you just you've been stuck in a job for a while but you didn't really want to move home. So you're considering, well, I could go back home to my hometown and live near. Okay. These are big decisions. You have family in tow.
Yeah.
Because by definition, we're talking about sandwich generation. So if you're going to move home, or maybe you decide, you know what, we're going to get a house together and we're going to put an in-law suite on it so that they're living on the same property with us. We'll talk some good details about that in a second. These are not small conversations. These are not small decisions. They are not inexpensive decisions, and they're emotionally fraught. Sometimes people have a real mental block about, but I don't want to move back home. I wanted to get away from my small town or wherever I grew up or whatever. That means I'm successful. Parents don't want to move away from the place where and you also have the consideration, because especially when we're talking about elders, socialization matters. So it is a consideration when you're moving them away from their network of support, of neighbors, of people that they've known forever. So you kind of have to balance all of those things. for each individual family, the decision might look different. Like it might make more sense for the younger generation to move to the elder generation. It might make more sense for the elder generation to move to the younger generation. Oh, every once in a while you have something thrown in. Well, the elder generation retired and then they moved down to Florida or something like that. And so now they live in a pretty place and they don't want to be anywhere close to. But then hurricanes come in and how do you... Sorry. Yeah. As you can see, I'm already getting a little
PTSD there, maybe.
A little PTSD. I might have a little bit of PTSD from that kind of thing.
I thought I was going to be the one that was going to get riled, and I am starting to get riled up, but I can see it in your face.
But it's hard. There are a whole lot of tough conversations to have in this. This is not the kind of thing that you can turn around either in 6 months. Like all of a sudden, oh gosh, dad's having mini strokes, which are little tiny micro blood clots that cause, mini episodes that often are a precursor or a pre-announcement to some major strokes, right? So if you start having mini strokes, you need to be prepared sometime in the next 2 years or something, and doctors will talk to you about this and everything, but you can't just, oh gosh, dad's having mini stroke. We need to get this done in 6 months. Good luck.
Yeah. That's not happening.
No, it's not happening. This is a start talking about it 5 years before you think you need to do it.
Yeah. So let me jump in here for a second. So on that point, we're sort of figuring out what makes the most sense. And so and I hope my family doesn't get mad for disclosing this, because this is where we're at, right? And this is the reality. And I've said this all to their face. So I'm not hiding anything here, right? But at the end of the day, so what we have going on right now is that we have Lauren's grandparents that live in Baytown. So for the uninformed, hour and a half from where I live, hour and 20 minutes. Now that's with no traffic.
Right.
Okay. And we live in the fourth biggest city in the United States.
We
so
sometimes have traffic.
We have traffic.
Yes.
Makes no sense to me how we have all this land and still have all this traffic, but I digress.
Don't get me started. Right. Have you seen the 59 spur loop?
Yeah, no. Okay. So I digress. So it can take, let's say anywhere from an hour and 20 minutes to 2 hours to get down there. And that's one way. So then the other way. So now there is, so we're in this situation right now where Lauren's grandmother has been sick, right? With a litany of things, right? And she's just getting older as it goes, right? And also that her grandfather had cancer a couple of years ago. And so as the cancer stuff sort of faded out of view and that was taken care of. And now also at that time, Hallie was small. And so one of the things we talk about is like when kids are small and babies, you can just throw them in the car and go. Right. Now it's like more of a thing. We have to, we're there so much now that Hallie has her own room of toys. Like she has her own space there because we have to kind of bounce back and forth so often. But anyway, so now we're in the situation where we have maybe like 2 months ago, we started thinking like, okay, we got to work something out. Either Lauren's dad needs to live with them, and there are some reasons why like that maybe might not work, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then some ideas of having them sort of move to us, and that's the one that we're all sort of on board with. Except the grandparents.
Yeah, administratively, that one's the easy call, but it's the hardest one emotionally.
Yes.
That happens all the time.
Right. And so you sort of get stuck in this web because you can't really force them to move. Right? And you still have the heart to want to take care of them.
Right.
And so now you get sort of stuck in this place of burnout because you're always going back and forth. And when things get bad,
3 hours round trip for you.
Yeah.
Easily.
Right. And if you got to do that
multiple times a week.
Yeah. Two
on
to 3
emergency.
times
It's not like you can plan it either because it's like, oh gosh, she's spiked a fever. She's got to go to the hospital. Like you got to drop everything you're doing to do that.
Right. And so, we have talked about, so the talk has now gone from no way. And I have a feeling this is how it will go for most folks that are trying to produce the outcome of having their grandparents and or parents move closer to them. It's gone from no way to, well, maybe we can look at something out here, to then reverting back to what about my friends, to then saying, but wouldn't it be nice to have us here and your family and we can see you all the time, they're older, up in their mid to late 80s. It's not like their social life is booming. I mean, the
Right.
reality is if they were closer, they would have way more of a social life with us.
Because you would be hooking them into your stuff. Hey,
Right.
Hallie has this soccer game. You want to come, and then we'll
Yeah.
take, and then
Go out to
come over for
lunch.
dinner,
Yeah,
or
whatever.
grandparents come over to, or one of my favorite things growing up. We were in high school. We had I was on the swim team, and it was my freshman year. And the girl who drove us to it, she was a neighborhood girl, and she was a junior. And we had to be in the water by 6 a.m. So we're getting up extra early. Anyhow, every Thursday morning, we would go extra early and have breakfast with her grandparents,
Yeah.
who lived about, halfway between our houses in the subdivision and the school, right? So it was a little bit of a detour and stuff. And at first it's kind of like, oh my gosh, now we got to get up at 5 instead of 5:30 and stuff. One of the best. It was great for them. It was great for us. We would go over there. They would give us sausage and biscuits. We would go off to swim. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they're in that 3-mile, 15-minute bubble, you can pull off stuff like that all the time.
All the time.
Mhm.
It's nothing to say, hey, Hallie's got a recital. We're going to go.
Right.
We got you a ticket. Like,
We're
there's
going
no
to
way.
pick you up.
Yeah, there's no way that they're coming to her recital. Like it's not feasible on
Right.
that day, right? So yes, you got to understand that it's going to be a struggle. The logistics in your mind will make total sense, and in their mind will not make sense. And so my disclaimer for you that is in the sandwich generation is at some point you are also going to be the parents that need to be taken care of, right? And so remember this time where you are struggling to get them to you or figure out that plan. So when it's your turn to be taken care of, just do the things, right? Make it easier for your kids and just do it, right?
I thought I was I couldn't decide whether I was the worst mom ever or the best mom ever. But this is when, so Jim's parents and my dad kind of all deteriorated quickly at the same time. And I say quickly, but the whole thing happened over about 5 years, but they
Right.
were all like all three of them.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of split how, we're dealing with stuff. My son was 12 at the time, something like that. Like he was not very old. And I finally, because he's the eldest, I pulled him in and I was like, look, I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell you this now. When your dad and he didn't want to talk about this at all. Because
Right.
also this talking about this stuff is kind of depressing. It's kind of like writing a will and wills and estates. I'm like, nobody wants to, or getting life insurance. Nobody wants to think about this stuff.
No.
But you need to. So I did. I set my 12-year-old down and I was like, look, this is what your father and I want one day. We want to be around y'all. We want to be around the grandkids. Whatever, I'm telling you now, while I'm totally sane and totally rational and dealing with this on the other side, this is what we want. So don't pay as much attention to me later when who knows what I'm going to think,
Right, right.
Especially because here's the thing too about elders. It's kind of an interesting little irony, or I don't know, synchronicity, I'll say, of the sandwich generation. As people age and their brain starts to age, they kind of regress in age and maturity. And so
Absolutely.
you have this, if you've got a 5-year-old or something like that, and then you've got elders that are, everybody's kind of in the 5 to 10-year-old range. The strategies that you use with your 6-year-old are going to be some of the same strategies that you use with your elders and stuff. And right now, I'm trying to be rational about that and tell my son, this is what I want.
This is really what I want.
This is really what I want. So when I'm acting like a 6-year-old,
When I'm a petulant child
yes,
at 80, don't listen to me. Because this is what I want. Yeah, you got to know that going into it, how difficult it is. And I'm not trying to downplay the experience. Like everyone's experiences are always so personal to them. And so when you're in that, Lauren's grandmother doesn't want to move because the neighbor across the street and, they've known, but we sort
and
of.
that's not nothing, by the way.
No,
It's not nothing.
I mean, hey, and we're sort of kind of traveling into the socialization point that I want to kind of talk about here is, and I think about it when you think about my grandmother, who is in her mid 80s back in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
She lives in it's not a retirement home, but it's like a senior community sort of living space, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason why these places are set up this way, where there are different activities and things throughout the day, because socialization, I dare say, would even be more important to people that are older because they're not going to work. They're not going to all these other places.
Exactly.
So that's why they're set up like this, right?
Exactly.
So now all of a sudden,
not to mention, we know tons of stuff about cognitive abilities. And like, so the little old ladies or the little old men getting together for a bridge game and stuff, that's good stuff. Like, that's not just little old ladies sitting there playing bridge. Okay. We're continuing, like, we're adding time onto their life, really.
Yeah. The bridge is a catalyst for more brain development, but also to connect and see what's going on. Like bridge is the conduit, right? It's not the actual thing. Like no one, they don't really care.
But they're still activating all their logic.
Yeah.
You lose it. You use it.
If you don't use it.
If you don't use it, you lose it. Okay. So if you're sitting around all the time, people that are very sedentary then tend to get stiffer joints and stuff, all sorts. Same kind of stuff goes with brain function.
Mm-hmm.
Older people need to be around other people. They need to be doing thinking kind of activities. They need to be doing social activities. It doesn't really matter if it's checkers or bridge or whatever.
Good. Yes.
But it needs to be.
It needs to be. So now, like, we have Lauren's grandparents that should be in a home, in a place like that, where they get to like make new friends and do sorts of things. But what's happening is that the socialization is really falling on us.
Right.
And so we're the ones that have to go out and do these Scrabble games and stuff like that, because we know how important that is. Right. And so, or Lauren's dad is there and he's playing Scrabble. And it's like, no, listen, nobody wants to play Scrabble with Lauren's grandmother. She will destroy you. She will make you feel like you don't even know the English language. It's embarrassing. I won't even play. I'll play anything else, but I will not play Scrabble. Right?
Because she's got the SAT words that get her.
My ego can't take it. Straight up, cannot take it. So anyway, so let them have some friends and things like that to do that with. So now you're in this point where they probably should be in some sort of established thing where they can get socialization, but now you're having to pull it in, but you can't always do it. And so when they don't do it, let me tell you what happens. They get sad, they get depressed, and trying to pull somebody out of depression is very, very hard, especially when they feel comfortable, right? They get comfortable in their state. I don't even want to say sadness, but that's sort of what it is. It's sort of like this perpetual sadness that sort of goes along because they don't have the ability to do. And if couples
and when we're talking about near end of life kind of stuff, it's not like, what are you going to tell them? Well, we have all sorts of things to look forward to, all sorts of potential. Like they're at the sunset time.
Yeah,
of
the
life,
happiness
right?
and joy has to be found in the day, in the moment, right? And you are able to do that when they're closer to you. So just know that this is the stuffing of the parachute. Like these are conversations, unfortunately, we should have had 3 years ago, but now we're having to have them now.
It is completely not early. Let's say you were 25 years old and you were listening to this and your parents are 50 or something like that.
Yep.
I'm just throwing out numbers here. Start having the conversation.
Just talk about it.
Just talk about it. Just because right now it's just kind of easy theoretical conversations and you can, continue on, start talking about it now.
But it's a foundation to build on later on down the line. And if you're feeling sort of awkward approaching your parents and saying something, I would just say something like this. Here's an example. I would say, Mom, Dad, I'm 25 years old. I'm just saying that. Mom, Dad, I know that this is kind of a weird thing to talk about. You just got to acknowledge that right out of the gates.
Right.
But one of the things that I think about is when you're older, I want to make sure that you're happy, that you're comfortable. And I think that one of the best ways to do that is to sort of like be close to us. And so I just want to start figuring out what that looks like because I love you and I care for you and I want you to be happy and I want you to be around your grandkids and possibly even your great grandkids. And so I want you to be a part of that. And they might just go, oh yeah, okay. No, we don't have to talk about it now.
Right.
But I'm just telling you, I want to talk about just even that will be enough to just get the ball rolling,
And if you've got time, then you can, 6 months later revisit it. And some people will be more open to the conversation. Some will be more resistant to the conversation. I mean, every family's going to have their own details
Yeah.
on this stuff, but start the dialogue now.
Yeah, this is definitely like having a birds and bees conversation with your kids.
Yes.
You know, like you're probably going to be the one and probably should be the one to bring that up and talk about it. Same thing with your parents here. You're going to have to be the one to bring it up and talk about it, because if they bring it up, it's way too late at that point if they start bringing it up, because chances are they're much older. Right. So
Okay, and then here's some other things that need to come up in that conversation, because the first big one needs to be, what does it look like when we're at this stage, when we're at the sandwich stage and you need some care and I've got littles at home? What does that look like? What do we as a family want that to look like? But because if that's not heavy enough, here are the other things you need to be talking about in that conversation. Things like medical power of attorney, like legal crap, medical power of attorney, who's like, so maybe you've got 3 or 4 siblings. Okay. And one of them is a doctor. So maybe the parents want to give medical power of attorney to the doctor one, but then there's also regular power of attorney just to administer finance. So, maybe parents would prefer to separate that out amongst their kids, because, by the way, this is hard stuff. And so divide and conquer a bit. Also, depending on people's different expertise, you might want to separate that out. Or maybe you just have 2 children and one is particularly more responsible than the other. And so you want to give them all of. I've seen various arrangements that worked well where elder mom and dad moved in with one sibling and the other sibling did all of the administrative, who lived, 600 miles away. They did all of the administrative stuff, right? And then every once in a while, parents would come visit the remote sibling to give other sibling to give everybody kind of a vacation.
Yep.
Right. But, there's all sorts of ways to divide up this kind of labor, this kind of life administration, but you need to start having the conversations now. You need to know about your parents' advanced care directives. What do they actually want? So if they do have the stroke, if they do have the car accident and they need to be kept on life support or whatever what do they like? How much life support do they want? How much intervention do they want? You need to have these not easy conversations to have, not easy conversation to have, need to have them to the extent that you have. And I recommend that everybody get, wills and stuff done. Have these kind of power of attorney and advanced care directives and stuff drawn up by your attorneys then.
Yeah.
Make it, the more formal you make it, the easier it goes on everybody when the time comes, because everybody, let's just call it the car accident. Everybody's emotions are running high then.
Yeah.
When the doctors come out and say, yeah, your dad is going to be a paraplegic for the rest of his life. And he's probably, we're waiting to see about brain activity or what. This is not the time you want to be making that decision.
Right. No. I mean, it's everything you can do just to kind of breathe in that moment.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So if you're one of the people, so this is confession time. This is confession time for me. So when it typically comes to these sorts of things, power attorney, advanced care directives, I like to be in charge of these kinds of things, right? I typically believe that I have the clearest head most of the time, that I can make the most informed decision, blah, 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 blah. The list
amongst
goes on.
Your family group.
Yeah, amongst my family, right? And so only because there are previous examples that sort of demonstrate, hey, when I've done these things, they've sort of worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to take all of this stuff on.
Mm-hmm.
And
it has to be granted.
Yes, it's got to be granted, but also you really don't want, you think that you want all of this. You think that you want to be in charge, like I'm my father's only son and I'm the oldest, right? And so like I should be taking care of this
That
stuff.
crumbles the moment you got to sign a DNR.
Yeah. So
a DNR is a do not resuscitate order.
So you want to divide this sort of stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
This is an emotionally, even someone that thinks I got it, you don't got it. You don't got it.
It's hard.
Right. And so I'll say, I want to say this story because I think it applies. So one of my mentors who I'm very, very close with, that for even during COVID, we would once a week, we would still like FaceTime and we just talk for like sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours. Like this is what is almost like therapy, but not. It was just a mentor and a mentee just sort of
friendship.
Exchange. Yeah,
It's a very important kind of relationship.
Exactly, right?
We should do an episode on that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
okay,
we should. We should. That's very
an
good.
Excellent one.
So write that down in your notes.
Okay,
Don't forget.
okay.
And you bumped the mic. My
And
goodness.
I'm
So anyway,
sorry,
back to
I bumped the mic.
Back to the
Okay.
story. You're very excited. So my mentor, who is 25, 30 years my senior, right? So he's in his 70s.
So's mine.
Yeah. So his wife's mom, they were coming to live. Like, hey, they did all the things right here. This is an important thing to understand. Did all the things right here. They'd set up for her mom, who is now like in her 90 plus. She was gonna come live with them. They had it all set up. Everything is looking great and wonderful. The 72 hours before she comes and lives with them, they have it all set up. The mom has a stroke. She has a stroke. She gets out of the hospital the day that she is supposed to move in with them. But the thing that they thought they were getting into in the beginning is now not that thing anymore. It's now the mom has lost recollection of how to even use the restroom. And when I say you lost recollection, like, okay, you take down your pants, you lift up the toilet seat, and they're having to teach, the again
strategies that I can't tell you how often you realize taking care of your parents is very similar to taking care of your toddler.
Yeah.
Because sometimes this kind of stuff, strokes are kind of horrible, fascinating things. I mean, it's amazing what the brain, just depending on where the blood clot went or where the blow went, what it forgets. Anyway.
Yeah. So I say this to say that, so the only difference now is that, like when I was potty training Hallie and take off your pants, right? She learns how to do it. And then eventually she doesn't need my help anymore.
Right.
But this is going to be the opposite. The mom of my mentor, she's going to need help over and over and over and over again. And it's just going to get worse. Now it's like baths and feeding, and like it's a completely different thing. So even when you stuff your parachute as much as you possibly can, my friend pulls the ripcord. He pulls that ripcord.
Right.
That parachute didn't come out the way that they stuffed it, And so now it's a whole different thing of getting more care and this, that, and the other thing. So even when you prepare perfectly, understand that there has to be, unfortunately, in this case, there will be some freedom within the framework.
Yes.
And it might not be the freedom that you want, but you got to know that going into it, right? You got to know that things aren't going, this is tough stuff. It's not going to look exactly the way that you want it to, but you still can prepare as much as you possibly can. So I also say that to say that you can't be worrying about what it's going to look like, what state they're going to be in when you're preparing to take care of your parents, because you're just not going to know what's going to happen. You're just not going to know. I mean, Lauren's brother, he passed away in a car accident. I guess 2 years ago. Like, I mean, in an instant, he was here. He was with us. Had 2 kids. They lived in Austin, and then bang, gone. And that everything changed from there on out, right? So you got to make a plan, but also try not to worry about the things that can happen. And when they do happen, understand, hey, this is how it goes sometimes. And you got to roll with it. So I felt like that was important to say, that all the planning in the world sometimes doesn't equal anything, but more often than not, it equals a lot.
Right. Exactly. It still puts you in better condition. So for your mentor that pulled the ripcord and didn't get the parachute that he thought he stuffed in there, but at least he was somewhat prepared for it. He had to modify, he had to zig.
Yeah.
But
it was a big zig.
It was a big zig. It was a big zig, but they were still generally.
She was planning on coming to the house. They had prepared a room for her, but now it was like, all right, we're going to need a live-in nurse. We're not like, they're 70 something. They're not equipped to deal with some of this stuff, So there was some added costs that they hadn't prepared for, and some, honestly, mental anguish. So
because that's
was very
on
hard
top
for
of
him.
this, you've got the emotional thing. It's one thing when you're changing the diapers on your children, that because you know that they're going to learn how to do this on their own and stuff. with your parents, it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
No, this is, and also they're the ones that always took care of you, and now you're having like fraught
It's
with
a weird
fraught with emotion
Yeah.
and difficulty in these kind of situations. But the more you have talked about it and the more you have planned for it, even if it doesn't go to plan, the better it will be. Oh, and there's my picture of my mentor right over there. Okay, sorry. I did forget one thing when I was saying for things to add into the conversation though, when you just said it with finances, bank accounts and other assorted logins. So if you have parents that are, say, in a car accident and are suddenly incapacitated, you need to be able to access their stuff so you can still pay their bills. And
Yeah.
I mean, because life administration still goes on.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
It still marches on. There's still a water bill to pay. And, the water company might be okay after when you realize that they've shut off the water because nobody's been paying the bill for 3 months because everybody's been up at the hospital all this time.
Yep.
Well, now you've still got to deal with the hassle of getting the water turned back on. And a nice water company might waive the reconnect fee, might not. But when you're in these financial issues, the last thing you need is another $100 reconnect fee. I mean, so you need to have this information. Lots of people will talk about having a binder with all sorts of passwords in it.
Mm-hmm.
Other people will keep them on encrypted files or notes or something like that on their devices. Use whichever one you want and you feel comfortable with, but make sure that somebody else, also this goes for you too, make sure somebody else has access to that and that they can get into your stuff.
Yeah.
Should need be.
Very important. Very important. You never know. You never know when things are going to happen, right? So anything else to add? I think this is like
back to the first principle, the 3 mile, 15-minute bubble. It just,
if nothing,
it makes all of this easier.
Yes. The sooner that you can work
Achieve
that out,
that.
the better, right? And hopefully you can do it in a time where they're not so mentally dependent on being where they grew up or in the house they've been in for 40 years. If you can make that transition before they become dependent on it because they're lonely and they feel isolated and the only connection they feel like they have is with the neighbor across the street, which they only see like once a week.
Right. Grandchildren are a great hook for this, by the way.
Absolutely.
Come be around your grandkids.
Yeah.
And then start to get them plugged into other things, say maybe your church or your neighborhood bridge group or whatever it is. But so if you do get the elders to move near you or in with you, then start to make sure that they have social outlets.
Right. Right. Which, I mean, that's the whole gig of why they're coming near you, is that you can surround people that are loving.
So sometimes
and that
you can make that
them.
transition happen.
Yeah.
That way.
Again, it's just about being prepared, right? Understanding where you're at, what they like,
and being prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Other than that, good. I'm looking at you, YouTube, and I'm looking at you too, podcast people. Go down, click the Discord link in the description. Come join us on the Discord. We'll be chatting about this and other sorts of things. We're letting people kind of funnel in there. We haven't pushed it super hard yet, but we're letting true believers come in now, right? So
there we go.
Come on in. Come
first
click
responders.
First responders. There you go. So the Discord link is in the description. Go ahead and click that. It'll bring you to Discord. I think you answer a couple questions just so we know who you are, and boom, you're off to the races. And you can say hi to Leslie and I, and we can answer questions that you may have. But other than that, I've been Ryan Talon.
And I've been Leslie Loftus.
And you've been awesome. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Why does it always make me laugh when you say that?
That's where I'm ending the episode. Bye-bye.
Okay.